Going ahead, the next topic is well-conditioned triangles. We were discussing this in our last video. Now, what is a well-conditioned triangle is mostly it should have a good shape in our common language. So, something like an equilateral triangle and isosceles triangle. But yet again, isosceles triangles can also have angles which are varying a lot. So, basically, the thumb rule is somewhere the angles which are inscribed inside three sides of the triangle should not be less than 30, nor it should be more than 120. And ideally, well-conditioned triangle will be something which has base angles 56 degrees 14 minutes. Now for this there is a derivation in your book Physical. However, that's not so important. So what you can understand from well-conditioned triangles is ideally equilateral or isosceles, and no angle inside a triangle should be less than 30 degree or more than 120. So when you have triangles like this, okay, or when you're carrying out triangulation process, when you're fixing points on ground with such type of triangles, your fix is supposed to be more accurate. Subtopic is strength of a figure. Now what we're talking about, what do you mean by figures? If you remember the different type of figures that we considered while carrying out your geodetic survey. Remember this, we've covered this in the last class. Now these are the different types of figures. So these will be the points where we are going to actually obtain the information, whatever it may be, lat long or height or elevation, whatever it is. So you can cover an area in this format by having your staff stations or instrument stations, or if you're collecting the information from a satellite. So these will be the way you will, these are the points that you're going to collect the data from. So now just as we need to find out which is the best system. Now when I say which is the best way, which is a good figure, or which is a suppose you have two triangles which are classifying, which are complying by the criteria of well-conditioned triangles, that is they have angles between 30 degrees and 120 degrees. Okay. Now if I want to find out which is a better triangle, or which is a better figure, which is a better system of networks, then the one thing that can help you in weighing which is better than the other, that one criteria, one quality is strength of the figure. Strength of the figure is a factor that has to be considered while establishing a triangulation system. Okay, to maintain the computations within a desired degree of precision. So better the strength, better will be the precision. Okay, now this is established by US Coast and Geodetic Survey. Okay, computation of triangulation involves use of angles of triangle and length of any one side of the triangle. Then what do you do with the other two sides? When you know one angle and two angles and one side, you calculate the other two sides and the other two angles by sine law. Sine law, cosine law, these are very important in case of surveying. Okay, especially because most of the times we are carrying out triangulation. We are connecting we are fixing one point from two known points. This is a basic principle behind triangulation. You have already two known points, and with the help of these two known points, you are fixing a third unknown point. So that is basically the principle behind triangulation. So usually what we do, we either measure the angles when we are doing triangulation, two angles, and length of one known side. So once you know two angles, third one will be obviously 180 minus something, and this length of the sides you calculate knowing all the three angles. Okay, and one side length is sufficient. So what is basically sine law? Okay, is the ratio of side, any side of the triangle, divided by sine of the angle between the other two sides. That is constant. So you make use of this particular theory that we learned in fundamental geometry, and you calculate the other two sides. Okay. Given change in the angle, sine of small angles can change more rapidly than those of large angles. Okay, that's the reason you do not have very small angles. You have to keep angles between 30 and 120. So that's why the angle less than 30 degrees should not be used. So strength of the figure will be given by this particular equation. Next is routine or triangulation survey. So what are the steps or what is the procedure that is actually adopted on site? First thing you have is reconnaissance. Okay, you go to the site and you have the first information that you collect only by visual observations is called reconnaissance. Next is erection of signals and towers, then measurement of baselines, measurement of horizontal angles, measurement of vertical angles, and astronomical observations to determine azimuths of the line. Okay, these are the steps that are involved in the triangulation fieldwork. The first step is reconnaissance. Here what we do, we examine the terrain to be surveyed. So what is the objective? We select suitable sites for measurement of baseline. First we decide from where the baseline will pass in your entire survey area. Okay, so your baseline should not be passing through obstructed or broken ground, right? So, and baseline is also supposed to be the largest line possible in your entire area, correct? So selection of suitable position of triangulation stations, determination of intervisibility of triangulation stations. This intervisibility, I have discussed this when you were studying GPS. What is intervisibility? Is when you are standing at one point, let's say with an instrument, you should be able to see the staff or another instrument. So this is one major concern when you are doing surveying, especially in geodetic, because the distances are huge, right? You are covering in nothing less than 10 kilometers, 10 to 12 kilometers. So if you're covering that distance, you should not be again and again changing the instrument. So that's the reason your baseline placement, your point space, where you're going to place your stations, okay, they should be placed such that they are forming well-conditioned triangles. At the same time, they should be placed in such a way that they are intervisible. Also, there should not be too many. Also, the network has to be good enough, correct? The next is selection of conspicuous, well-defined natural points to be used as intersected points. What do you mean by conspicuous, well-defined? It should be easily identifiable. See what happens, obviously these geodetic surveys that I told you, they are more than 250 kilometers square area. So the work is going on for multiple number of days, right? You don't want to lose the points which you have already surveyed. That's the reason the points have to be conspicuous. Why well-defined natural points is something which is, if not permanent, it should be at least semi-permanent. It should not move and it should be as far as possible natural points. Something which will be easily seen. Okay. Then other objectives is collection of miscellaneous information regarding access to various triangulation stations, transportation facilities, availability of food, water, electricity also, okay, availability of labor, then camping ground. All this information will be obtained in reconnaissance. If you realize nowhere we have taken any measurement, so all this information will be collected just by your visual observation. Now, next thing is signals and towers. First, let's understand what is a tower. Tower is a structure over a station to support the instrument and observer, and is provided when the station or signal or both are to be elevated. So basically, when is this required, signal or tower? These are required, specifically tower, it's required when, let's say, the intervening ground is having an undulated profile. Now in plane survey, okay, tachyometry, whatever we all study, see your tachyometer was here, okay, and RL of this point is 100 meters, okay, and let's say your staff station is here. RL of this point is 100 meters, right? And now this is your line of sight. You are standing here, okay? You are standing at the instrument. This is where you are standing. Any doubts on whether this point or this point will be visible from here? Will this point be visible for you? Obviously yes, right? This is also at 100 meters. You are also standing at 100 meters. It will be visible. But now we are not talking about plane surveying. We are talking about geodetic survey. Now what happens if something is like this? Now something will be like this when these distances are huge. Okay. greater than 12 meters, 10 meters or so. Now this may not be visible. Also what happens? There may be undulated ground in between. This is RL 100, this also is RL 100, but there may be physical obstructions also. So there are multiple reasons 2 points may not be visible. So now if 2 points are not visible, sometimes what is done? You are viewing from here, your point to be viewed is at this point, and maybe it's not visible because of curvature. So usually what you do, you construct a masonry structure. And then you have a signal placed on top. Okay. Now this signal is of various type, but let's complete with this start. So basically why a tower will be constructed is when your star station is not visible. Okay. Or from here if you are viewing another instrument station, then both the instrument stations are not intervisible. Right? So in that case you have a masonry structure over which signals are constructed. Sometimes these towers are even made of steel, they are made of wood also. Alright, so signal is a device that is erected to define the exact position of triangulation station so that it can be observed from another station. Okay, now these signals are of 2 types. There is non-luminous signals and luminous signals. Non-luminous signals will be used for anything which is less than 30 kilometers. Okay, so these may be poles, something like this is a tripod, it can be a tripod, and there may be a pole like this. Okay, so this with strips, you can use it can be something like this, or there may be, now these strips are just serving as a targets, and or then will be like this, some wooden planks, these again on a tripod or something like that. Okay, these are non-luminous signals, something like a target signal. Okay, now what are luminous signals? Luminous signals are also called sun signals. Okay, here what happens is sun's ray is reflected on the observing theodolite. It's something like, you know, how those who have used total station will understand how in case of a total station we keep a prism and hit the razor, and based on the time that is elapsed between sending the signal and receiving the signal back, the distance will be calculated. Just as that, sun signals are also basically using sun's rays which are reflected back to the observing instrument, which is usually a theodolite. Okay. Again, these will be used for anything which is the sites which are greater than 30 kilometers. Okay. These will be for sites which are greater than 30 kilometers. Next is the criteria for selecting triangulation station. Obviously, as I have told before, the first thing is the station should be intervisible. Okay. So obviously, if you want the stations to be intervisible, then the station point should be selected on the highest point of the ground. So if your ground profile is like this or something, where you will keep your signals or where you will keep your triangulation stations will be obviously on the peaks. Okay. They should be easily accessible with the instrument station. You should not go where the ground is broken. Let's say your topography goes like this and down like this. You should not go to a place like this because it may not be accessible. Understandable. It should not be hazardous. There should not be too much of vegetal cover, or there should not be too much of any chances of insects or any such things. Also, your station should be safe. It should not be moving. It should be a stable position, exist, and this instrument should be have a point on a well-conditioned triangle. Okay. It should be well connected with your remaining network. Then it should be located such that the lengths of sides are neither too small or not too long. This is exactly what is the meaning of well-conditioned triangle. So if your station is here, I am drawing this in the plan. Okay. So this point should not be connected to the remaining baseline by either very small lengths, neither it should be connected to the baseline. Let's say this is your baseline. It should neither be connected by very small length. See, now this triangulation station should form a well-conditioned triangle and should be so located that the lengths of sides are neither too small nor too long. What do you mean by this actually? So let's say this is your baseline, okay? And now you are trying to locate this point. So this point should be connected to a baseline in such a way that the triangle or the lengths of the sides are not neither too small nor too large. Because what happens if the lengths of the sides are too long? Let's say if you are trying to fix this point from these 2 points, okay, rather something like this or this. Now this is not going to be a good fix. Similarly, if you try to locate these points from these 2 points, will this be a good fix? Here it is too long, here it is too small. So ideally the fix should be from here to here and here to here. Now clearly you can see if this angle or this angle or this angle, none of them are less than 130, neither are they more than 120. So when I say it should form a well-conditioned triangle, the length of the side should not be neither too small nor too long is obvious. If this is going to be too long, then some angles are going to be very small while some angles are going to be very big. Similarly here also, if you are trying to fix with these 2 black lines, then this angle is going to be very small. Although this may be good enough, but this angle is going to be very small. So such kind of arrangements of stations should be as far as possible avoided. At commanding positions so as to serve a control for subsidiary triangle and for possible extensions of main triangulation scheme. So basically what it's trying to say is your triangulation station should be, even if it is a subsidiary station, it may not be a main station, but it should be as far as possible, it should be at a commanding position. Now again, commanding position means it's repetitive of what we have already spoken. It should be your subsidiary stations or your main stations. They should be so placed that they are easily visible. They are very conspicuous. You don't need to go searching for it, neither on ground nor on paper. Understandable. It should not be in some corner of some place. Okay. Then station should be useful for providing intersected points and also for detailed survey. Okay. If there is any particular in your entire survey area, if there is any particular point which you find important, let's say you are surveying a place and you find out there is a cavity in a place. Okay, suddenly there is ground subsidence. You should be able to get all this critical information from the triangulation station, whether it is main or it may be a subsidiary triangulation station, but it should be in a state to cover your entire command area. Okay. Then in wooded country, that is when there is a lot of tree cover, the station should be selected such that cost of clearing and cutting and building towers is minimum. Grazing line of sites should be avoided. And no line of sight should pass over industrial areas to avoid irregular atmospheric refraction. Then what do you mean by this? Okay, in plane surveying what happens? Now this is your line of sight, okay? And your staff is here. Okay, this point. Let's say this is at 101, this is at 100. And in between there is a point which is, let's say, 100.5. Now in case of plane surveying, if I try to incline this, okay, like this, and say this is 102. Now I am inclining in order to see 102. Okay. And let's say at this point it is slightly, it's clearing this uneven ground by let's say this is at 0.5 meter above this point. Whatever, depends on this inclination angle, I don't know. But let's say this line of sight in plane surveying is above this in between obstruction by 0.5. Okay. Now in geodetic surveying what happens? This profile I told you becomes circular and these distances are becoming huge. So this distance of 0.5 may not remain 0.5 when you are doing geodetic surveying. In plane surveying, even if it is clearing by 0.5, in geodetic surveying, it is possible this line of sight will actually get obstructed over here. Because over here the distances are too much. Because the distances are too much, your line of sight, which is actually supposed to be horizontal in plane surveying, this starts becoming refracted. Okay, it starts getting away from the true horizontal axis. Now this is because of the curvature as well as the refraction. Okay, whenever there is temperature changes near the earth's surface, okay, these line of sights tend to reflect. Okay, they tend to tilt. That is why it is necessary, when you start solving problems, you will realize always when we are in our problems, what you will be given is you will be told elevation of this, you will be told the distance between this point and the staff station. Okay, and you will be told the elevation of this station also. You will be asked to find how much we have to tilt this line of sight so that first of all it is visible. So that this final point, your staff station, is first of all visible. Second of all, if there are any obstructions in between, your line of sight should at least clear the obstruction by 2 meters. Okay, this is what your numerical will expect from you. Are you understanding? So, when the word grazing line of sight should be avoided, what it actually means is your line of sight should not be very close to any obstruction. Okay, it should be clear from the obstruction. In plane surveying, even if it is clear by 1 centimeter, it is as good as clear. But in geodetic surveying, you have to take more care because even if it is 2 meter clear, sometimes the distance between these 2 points, the instrument station and that in between obstruction is so huge that your line of sight actually tilts. And even though this point has a RL, let's say 101, and your instrument has a RL of 100, even if this point has a RL of 101, you will have an obstruction here. Okay. Also, it is necessary that your line of sight should not pass over the industrial areas. Why not over the industrial areas? Because there are always fumes above the industrial areas. There are exhausts of the industry. The moment there is particulate matter or if there is uneven heating of the atmosphere, then your line of sight is going to tilt. It's going to get refracted. Correct? If your line of sight is going to be refracted, then obviously your again calculations of our levels will be incorrect. And the next thing is intervisibility and height of station. Now we've already discussed that when you are setting up triangulation stations, they should be selected in commanding areas. They should be they should be very conspicuous. Okay, they should be at the peaks. Whatever are the higher levels of the ground, you should try to keep them at the peaks. Now, intervisibility of any 2 points is affected majorly by 3 things. Okay. Now, which are these 3 things? The distance between the station, relative elevation of station, and profile of intervening ground. Now, let's come to the first factor, that is distance between the station. Okay, when I'm talking about the stations, it can be a point which is being surveyed or a point which is which you are surveying from. So, it can be a instrument station, it can be a staff station. So, the equation is H is equal to D squared upon 2R1 minus 2M. Okay. Now, what you need to remember is this D will be in kilometers and H will be in meters. So, those conversions are already taken here. Okay. So, D is going to be in kilometers. Okay, I will write here in some other end, and you need to have this on your book before we start solving, and this h will be in meters, so this is very important. Okay, r is the mean radius of earth. All right, that is I don't know how much it is, and m is the mean coefficient of diffraction. Now this mean coefficient of diffraction is usually taken as 0.07. Okay, again r is also in kilometers only, right? So this is usually taken as 0.7. Now the second thing is relative elevation of the stations. So at this point you can see that the line of sight is intersected by horizon. Correct? The line of sight is being intersected by horizon. So here we will be calculating the relative elevation of stations. So in other words, we are calculating the value of h1 and h2. So if you are at point A, what should be the height h2 such that let's imagine these are the points on the ground. Okay, so you are viewing from point A. Okay, you have, let's say, the line of sight h1 above this point on the ground. Okay, so you want to know this point, how much it has to be elevated such that it is visible from A. Okay, so let's say h1 and h2 are the known elevations of A. Okay, or you can say h1. I will just write down the meanings of all these terms. So let's say you are viewing from point A, and h1 will be the known elevation. Okay, so this is the known elevation. So this is given in your problem, that elevation of this point is so and so, h1 will be so and so value. Okay, and you will be asked to calculate what will be h2. Okay, what is d1 and d2? d1 and d2 are the respective distances of h and b from this point of tangency. Okay, so total distance between a and b will be d1 plus d2. For the distance or the height of the signal h1, we have previously already derived this equation, h is equal to d squared upon 2r into 1 minus 2m, where I told you m is equal to 0.7, r is the radius of earth. So if I substitute all the values, I get value of h is equal to 0.06728 d squared, where h is in meters and d is in kilometers. So I substitute this thing over here and I get h1 is equal to 0.06728 d1 squared. This gives me d1 is equal to under root of h1 upon 0.06728. So this will be equal to 3.855 into h1. This you all are expected to know. So once I know this distance d1, okay, what is given to me is h1. So I find out what will be the value of d1, that is the point of horizon or tangency from A will be d1. Once I know d and I know the total distance, I can calculate d2, which will be equal to d minus d1. Okay. Once I know d2, I can calculate the value of h2. I have this equation d2 and which connects d2 and h2. So I can substitute it back and I will get h2 is equal to 0.06728 into d2 squared. Now doing this, what I get, how much I should elevate this point so that it is visible from A. This is how I obtain. When you solve some numericals, this will be more clear. The next factor that affects intervisibility is profile of intervening ground. Okay, so let's say this is the profile of intervening ground. Okay, you have a point A, you have a point B, and in between you have a peak C. Okay, h1 is the height of station A above datum, h2 is the height of station B above datum. Okay, h is the height of line of sight above C, and 2s is the distance between A and B. Okay, S plus X is the distance between A and C. S minus X is the distance between B and C. Okay, so knowing all these things, the height h of the line of sight at the obstruction, okay, here will be given as this equation. Okay, now in this equation, this epsilon is a zenith angle. What is zenith angle? If you look at this diagram, this angle is measured with the plumb line, vertical axis. Okay, so that angle will be denoted as epsilon. Okay, and this epsilon will appear in this equation for h, which is the distance by which this point has to be raised in order to make your line of sight unobstructed. So you are actually measuring this h, okay, at C. Now in the textbook there are some equations which will tell you what is the value of this epsilon, okay, what are the equations for this epsilon. But when we are actually solving the numericals, what we don't need to calculate this epsilon. We are simply going to use the principle of similar triangles, okay, and solve this problem. Alright. So after you all finish viewing all these videos on geodetic surveying, then we will start with the analytical part, how we calculate actually and what are the actual on-site issues with geodetic surveying.